All right, in this video, I'm going to talk about 3 or 4 things about the rear end of the SRX4, SRX2, the Gen 3 buggies. So the first thing I'm going to cover is the differential height, and this is going to apply for the front and rear differential height. So you want to adjust the diff height with the surface that you're driving on. So for a high traction surface, you want to have a high diff, and a low traction surface, you want to have a low diff height. Now, the reason isn't just that simple, like you just high traction, high diff. The reason is to match the roll center for the surface. So you want your roll center to match the surface. So for on a high bite surface, you want to have a high roll center, and for a low bite surface, you want a low roll center. It seems counterintuitive, it doesn't match the words, but trust me, that's how it is. So again, when you're moving between tracks, let's say you're gonna go outside on a wet, loamy surface outside, you want to have a low or mid-low differential height. If you're running like a whole shot tire, that's kind of be what you're gonna run. If you're running on a clay with a bar type or a ghost pin, you're gonna want to run a mid, and either a mid-low, mid, or mid-high. Probably a mid is a really good start. Your turf tires and your turf and carpet tracks, you're gonna want to run a mid-high transmission or a high transmission. That's front and rear. You want them to match. So the next thing here, this is consistent with what I said earlier about your transmission heights. So in higher grip conditions, you'll want to use the 2.5 or 3 millimeter higher roll centers. So these are for your inserts on the hub. What I did on my SRX4 right here is I moved this left hub to a high roll center and the right hub to a low roll center. So if you see that the hub here on the right, I have would be this insert, the narrow. This is I guess an extreme example for if you're gonna run on a dirt outside, you'd run this 0 millimeter, and then on carpet or turf, you're gonna wanna run a high roll center, so you're gonna wanna push that hub all the way out and all the way up. So here on this hub, I have what would be this insert. Again, 3 millimeter for the high roll center. This is just an example to show you. Don't actually run the car like this, but if you look here, how much of the hub is below the arm compared to this side, how much of the hub is below the arm, and the distance between that axle and the arm compared to here, you can see it's a lot closer to it. So on this side, the right side is set up for a higher ride height. The transmission is also higher. Again, this is not, I don't actually run it this way. I just set it up for this video. So as you can see how much lower the right side will hang down. Doesn't look like much, but this difference in the pin height, difference between all the way up here and all the way down here, is immediately and directly affects where that axle is sticking out at. So that's another way you adjust your ride height, as well as your roll center. Now the reason why I adjust your roll center is because it moves the entire hub up and down. So again, high roll center for high traction. So that's, by moving this hub all the way up, it's the equivalent to taking this ball stud and moving it all the way up, compared to this one and moving it all the way down. I'll try and actually get to, let's see here, take some basic measurements, right? So if we are about right there, you can see how much higher that is on that side. So kind of a bad example, but it's, I'll show you here shortly. So we've covered the differential height, right? High traction, high roll center, high diff height, low traction, low roll center, low diff height. Three millimeter, 2.5, 2 for a high roll center on high grip, and then the 0, 0.5, 1 for the low grip. You don't need to worry about too much about this. I won't get into the how far you put your drive pin in. That doesn't really mean too much. So the last and final way that you're gonna adjust your roll center with the SRX4 Gen 3 buggies, or SRX4 Gen 3, SRX2 Gen 3, is with the inner pin, hinge pin. So these are very tricky to adjust with. For most surfaces, most people, I'd recommend keep it right in the middle, 1 and 1. It's just simpler. But as an example, again, on my buggy, I put the left C block at the 1 all the way up and outboard, and then the D block all the way up and outboard, and then on the right side, all the way down and inboard, all the way down and inboard. These are two extremes where the right side would be set up for loose dirt and the left side is set up for carpet. And I'm going to show you why that is and how that changes the roll center. So if you look on this side, that arm is practically on the chassis, right? It's very low, which means that your arm is going to be very low below the chassis. And on this side, you can see there's a big, 2 millimeter gap between the chassis and the arm, where the arm is sitting higher. Now, if you think about that, what does that effectively do? It means that this hinge pin on this left side is closer to this ball stud. And then on this side, the hinge pin is further away from the ball stud. That is the same thing as adding a shim underneath the ball stud or removing shims under the ball stud. Now, why would I do that? Well, because that's how you're gonna adjust your roll center. So on the inboard mounts, front and rear, roll center is adjusted through these ball studs. A lower inner height results in a higher roll center. A higher ball stud height results in a lower roll center. So again, like we said, this arm is lower to the chassis, meaning the difference between the hinge pin and the ball stud is greater than on this side. It's shorter. So that's equivalent to having a high roll center and a low roll center. Now, it's a very minor adjustment and most people might not be able to see it, but you'll definitely feel it on the track on how you do that. So for my buggies, what I do is I don't really adjust the ball stud heights too much, either on the hub or on the camber block. I usually adjust my roll center with the hub position, the hinge pin position, and the differential height. That's how I adjust most of them. It works for me. It keeps the buggy consistent. When I drive, I like my vehicles to feel the way they do on carpet, the same as the handling on dirt, on clay, everything. I want my driving style to stay the same, but the surface and the buggy to